10,000 bronze-clad warriors stood in perfect silence as 300,000 enemies darkened the horizon. These were the same Spartans whose brothers had died at Thermopylae just 1 year earlier. What happened next would become the most savage act of vengeance in ancient history. In just 6 hours, 50,000 Persian soldiers would lie dead on Greek soil. The fate of Western civilization hung on this single day, August 27th, 479 BCE. By the end of this video, you'll understand how a small force of Greeks orchestrated the most devastating military revenge in history, why the Persians walked straight into their trap, and the brutal tactic that turned disciplined soldiers into merciless killing machines. Here's what I'm going to reveal. First, the secret signal that triggered the slaughter, a single prayer that changed everything. Second, why Pausanias deliberately let his men die of thirst while water flowed just miles away. And third, the exact moment Mardonius, the Persian commander, realized he'd been played like a fool. But consider this. Why did the Spartans wait while arrows rained down on them, killing their brothers in arms? How did starving, dehydrated Greeks suddenly become an unstoppable force of bronze and fury? What made hardened Persian veterans, men who'd conquered half the known world, flee in absolute terror? How could the world's largest army fall for such an obvious trap? Think about it. 300,000 veteran soldiers, led by the empire's finest general, walked straight into a killing field. How did Greeks kill 50,000 enemies while losing only 1,000 of their own? And then there's Pausanias, the mysterious Spartan commander who claimed to speak with gods, who turned military disaster into devastating victory. This is his story, and the story of how 10,000 men extracted a blood price that would echo through history. To understand this revenge, we must return to where it all began. If you're fascinated by how ancient warriors turned defeat into devastating victory, hit that like button and subscribe for more epic tales of military revenge. Ring the bell to witness history's bloodiest comebacks. Now, let me transport you to that scorching August day in 479 BCE. 1 year earlier, 300 Spartans had made their legendary last stand at Thermopylae. King Leonidas and his men held the narrow pass for 3 days against impossible odds before Persian betrayal sealed their fate. Every single Spartan died, their bodies mutilated, Leonidas's head mounted on a spike. The message was clear: resist Persia and face annihilation. Now meet the players in this drama of revenge. First, Pausanias, the ghost commander, regent of Sparta, nephew to Leonidas, a man who consulted oracles before every decision. Soldiers whispered he could see the future in sacrificial blood. He commanded respect through mystery and fear through competence. At just 25 years old, he carried Sparta's honor and his family's revenge on his bronze-covered shoulders. Opposing him stood Mardonius, the kingmaker, Xerxes' brother-in-law, the power behind the throne. While Xerxes fled back to Persia after the naval disaster at Salamis, Mardonius stayed with 300,000 of the empire's finest troops. He'd torched Athens, scattered the Greek alliance, and now aimed to finish what Thermopylae started. Victory would make him the most powerful man in the Persian Empire. Then there was Aristides the Just, the Athenian commander whose city lay in ashes. Persian fires had consumed the Acropolis, destroyed centuries of culture. His was not just military duty but personal vendetta. Every Athenian soldier under his command had lost homes, family, everything to Persian torches. The Persian Empire in 479 BCE stretched from India to Egypt, from the Caucasus to Ethiopia, the largest empire the world had ever seen. Its military machine had crushed Babylon, conquered Egypt, subjugated dozens of kingdoms. Their cavalry swept across battlefields like death itself. Their archers darkened skies with arrows. Their immortals, the 10,000-strong royal guard, had never known defeat. Against this stood the fractured Greek city-states. Sparta and Athens, eternal rivals, barely maintained their alliance. Corinth trusted neither. Smaller cities switched sides with the wind. The only thing uniting them was Persian threat and the fresh memory of burned homes. Athens still smoldered. Refugees crowded every allied city. The taste of ash lingered in Greek mouths. The burning of Athens had happened just months before. Persians had systematically destroyed every temple, every statue, every building of note. They'd poisoned wells, salted fields, enslaved thousands. This wasn't just conquest. It was cultural extermination. Every Greek soldier at Platea had seen the smoke, heard the stories, knew someone who died. But here's where Pausanias revealed his first genius move. Instead of attacking immediately while Greek rage burned hot, he waited. He gathered forces from 31 city-states, managed their feuds, built discipline from chaos. He turned emotional fury into cold, calculated vengeance. The Spartans would have their revenge, but on their terms. But how do you fight an enemy that outnumbers you 3-1? How do you unite Greeks who'd rather fight each other than Persians? How do you turn defensive desperation into offensive annihilation? Pausanias had a plan. A terrible, brilliant plan that would cost Greek lives to save Greek civilization. The Persian host that darkened the plains of Platea defied comprehension. Ancient sources claim 300,000 men. Modern historians debate the exact number, but all agree it was massive. At its core stood the Immortals, 10,000 elite infantry whose name came from their practice of immediately replacing casualties. They wore scale armor that glittered like serpent skin, carried wicker shields, and fought with versatility, bow, spear, and sword. Supporting them came the cavalry, the pride of Persian warfare, 30,000 horsemen from Media, Bactria, and Persia proper. These weren't just riders but horse archers who could put an arrow through a Greek ice lot at full gallop. Their tactical mobility had won dozens of battles, turning static infantry fights into fluid slaughters. On the open plains of Platea, they held every advantage. The Greeks brought 80,000 hoplites, heavy infantry that fought like human tanks. At the heart stood 10,000 Spartans, not just the famous 300 royal guard, but the full military might of Lacedaemon. Each Spartan, trained from age 7, lived for war, died for glory. Their bronze breastplates could turn Persian arrows. Their 8-foot spears outreached Persian weapons. Their discipline was legendary. They'd die in formation before breaking ranks. Athens contributed 8,000 hoplites, each burning for revenge. Corinth sent 5,000, Megara 3,000. Even tiny Platea, whose territory would host this apocalyptic clash, managed 600 men. Every Greek state that still breathed free sent what they could, but numbers tell only part of the story. The weapon contrast defined the battle's nature. Greeks fought with the dory, an 8-foot thrusting spear perfect for phalanx warfare. Their bronze-faced hoplon shields weighed 30 pounds, but could interlock into an impenetrable wall. Full panoply armor, bronze breastplate, greaves, helmet, turned each hoplite into a walking fortress. But this weight meant one thing: no retreat. Greeks won or died where they stood. Persians preferred flexibility. Their spears were shorter, meant for versatile combat. They carried wicker or leather shields, light, maneuverable, perfect for their fluid tactics. Most wore linen or leather armor that traded protection for mobility. Their true strength lay in combined arms: arrows to soften, cavalry to flank, infantry to finish. They fought like water. Greeks fought like stone. Mardonius's strategy was simple and historically successful. Use Greek allies. Thebes had sided with Persia, providing intelligence and 50,000 troops. Harass with cavalry, cutting supplies and water, force the Greeks to attack uphill or starve. Then, when they broke formation in desperate assault, Persian mobility would turn the battle into a massacre. It had worked before. It should work again. But Pausanias faced a greater challenge than Persian numbers. The Greek alliance barely held together. Spartans considered Athenians soft democrats. Athenians saw Spartans as brutal oligarchs. Corinthians trusted neither. Each contingent had its own commander, its own agenda, its own honor to protect. One wrong move, one perceived slight, and the alliance would shatter. Pausanias had to manage not just a battle but 31 separate egos. Then Pausanias made a decision that seemed insane. He positioned his forces not on defensible high ground, but in the foothills south of Platea, near the Asopus River. The position offered water, but exposed his flanks to cavalry. Military logic screamed against it, which is exactly why Mardonius would take the bait. The omens came next. Greeks never fought without divine approval, and Pausanias took this seriously, obsessively. Every morning, he sacrificed animals, read their entrails, consulted seers. The men grew restless. Persians watched and laughed. What kind of general let sheep guts dictate strategy? But Pausanias waited. The gods would speak when the trap was ready. For 10 days, armies stared across the plains. Small skirmishes, cavalry raids, archer duels, but no general engagement. Mardonius grew confident. Greeks were afraid. His cavalry ruled the field between armies. His supplies were secure. Time favored Persia. Let the Greeks cook in their bronze under the August sun. Soon, thirst and heat would break their spirit. Then would come the slaughter. As dawn broke on the 11th day, everything went wrong. Day 1 passed in staring and sizing up. Persian cavalry probed Greek lines, testing reactions. Arrows flew in ranging shots. Both armies settled into positions. But by day 2, Mardonius unleashed his horsemen in earnest. Wave after wave of cavalry swept across the plains, firing arrows into Greek ranks, wheeling away before spears could respond. This was Persian warfare at its finest. Death from distance, mobility over mass. The harassment never stopped. Dawn brought horse archers. Noon saw heavier cavalry charges that pulled back just outside spear range. Dusk meant more arrows, more taunting, more psychological warfare. Greeks couldn't respond. Their heavy infantry couldn't catch horses. They could only stand, endure, and bleed. Each day, dozens fell to arrows, finding gaps in bronze. But here's where Pausanias revealed his genius. He let it happen. While his men cursed and demanded attack, he studied Persian patterns. While allies questioned his courage, he counted cavalry timing. Every harassment raid taught him something. Mardonius was revealing his entire tactical playbook, growing overconfident with each successful day. Then came the water crisis. Persian cavalry found and fouled the springs, feeding Greek positions. Dead horses, human waste, anything to poison water sources. The Asopus River still flowed, but reaching it meant exposing water carriers to arrow storms. Greeks began rationing. In August heat, wearing 70 pounds of bronze, dehydration became a weapon more deadly than arrows. By day 6, Greek supply convoys couldn't get through. Persian cavalry ambushed every wagon train from the south. Food dwindled, water barrels emptied. Men started collapsing from heat exhaustion. The Spartans maintained discipline, but other contingents wavered. Arguments broke out. Athens blamed Sparta for the exposed position. Corinth threatened to leave. The alliance was cracking. What happened next defied everything we know about ancient warfare. On the night of day 10, Pausanias ordered a general retreat. Not a fighting withdrawal, not a tactical repositioning. A full retreat toward Platea city, in darkness, with 80,000 men who'd never maneuvered together. Military historians still debate whether he'd lost his nerve or played his deepest card. The night march became a disaster, exactly as any competent general would expect. Units got separated in darkness, orders confused. The Athenians went too far left, the Corinthians too far right. Smaller contingents scattered between them. By dawn, instead of a unified army in a new position, Greeks were spread across miles in 3 isolated groups. Amateur hour at its worst. But wait, the Spartans weren't retreating. They were still on their original ridge. Their commander, Amompharetus, had refused Pausanias's order, calling retreat cowardice. While other Greeks stumbled through darkness, 10,000 Spartans remained exactly where they'd started. As dawn broke, they stood completely isolated, separated from all support, exposed on a gentle ridge with their backs to broken ground. Perfect Persian cavalry terrain. Persian scouts couldn't believe their fortune. The Greek army had disintegrated, Spartans abandoned, other contingents scattered and vulnerable. They raced back to Mardonius with the incredible news. The mighty Greek alliance had collapsed in panic. Victory was his for the taking. Mardonius smiled. The Greeks had handed him victory on a silver platter. 10 days of pressure had broken their spirits. Now came the harvest. He ordered his entire army forward. Infantry, cavalry, everyone. Why allow any Greeks to escape? This would be complete annihilation. The isolated Spartans would die first, then each scattered contingent would be run down and destroyed. By sunset, Greek resistance would be a memory. As Persian forces advanced, Mardonius made a fateful decision. Instead of sending just cavalry to finish the isolated Spartans, he'd lead his elite infantry personally. This wasn't just tactics, it was theatre. The nephew of Leonidas would die where his uncle's killers watched. Persian morale would soar. Greek resistance would collapse. The symbolism was perfect. At 0600 hours, 300,000 Persians began their advance. Cavalry led, streaming toward the isolated Spartans. Behind came the immortals in their glittering scale armor. Persian allied Greeks from Thebes marched against their countrymen. The entire host moved with the confidence of predators approaching wounded prey. But here's the detail historians still can't explain. As Persians advanced, Pausanias ordered his Spartans to move slowly backward, down the reverse slope of their ridge. To Persian eyes, it looked like fear, Spartans retreating without even fighting. In reality, Pausanias was adjusting his position by mere hundreds of yards, onto ground he'd studied for 10 days, into a position that would funnel Persian attacks into a killing ground. The trap Pausanias had spent 10 days preparing was about to snap shut. Every mistake had been calculated, every retreat planned. The scattered Greek forces weren't fleeing, they were in precisely the positions Pausanias had designated. The isolated Spartans weren't abandoned, they were bait. And Mardonius, in his eagerness for glory, was about to walk 300,000 men into the most devastating ambush of the ancient world. But the Persians didn't know that yet. 600 hours! Persian cavalry struck first, 10,000 horsemen sweeping towards Spartan lines in a thunder of hooves and dust. Arrows flew like horizontal rain. Ancient sources claim 10,000 shafts per minute at the storm's peak. The sky literally darkened as waves of missiles arced toward bronze-clad Greeks. This wasn't battle yet. It was systematic execution by arrow. Spartans raised their shields in the classic phalanx formation, each man's shield protecting the warrior to his left, creating an interlocking wall of bronze and wood. But arrows found gaps. They slipped between shields, punched through exposed thighs, found throats above breastplates. Men started falling. Blood slicked the dry ground. Still, the Spartans stood motionless. What happened next defied everything we know about ancient warfare. As casualties mounted, as brothers fell beside brothers, the Spartans didn't charge. They didn't loose their own arrows. They simply stood, shields locked, dying by dozens, waiting. Persian cavalry grew bolder, riding closer, picking targets. Why weren't these legendary warriors fighting back? Pausanias stood in the front rank, arrows shattering against his shield, performing sacrifice after sacrifice. The sacred animal's entrails kept showing unfavorable omens. Without divine approval, Spartans wouldn't attack. Men cursed as friends died. Officers pleaded. Persian mockery echoed across the field. Still, Pausanias sacrificed. Still, the omens came back negative. Still, Spartans died without striking back. The Tegean allies on the Spartan right couldn't take it anymore. Watching friends pin-cushioned with arrows while priests played with sheep guts broke their discipline. With a roar of frustrated rage, 1,500 Tegeans broke ranks and charged the Persian cavalry. No orders, no formation, just fury and bronze rushing at their tormentors. That's when physics took over, and physics favored bronze. The Persian cavalry, supremely confident from 10 days of harassment, had pressed too close. Now heavy infantry was among them. Horses screamed as spears found their flanks. Riders toppled into the dust, trampled by their own mounts. The Tegean charge was suicidal, undisciplined, and it worked. Persian cavalry reeled back in confusion. In that instant, 50,000 fates were sealed. Pausanias raised his arms to the sky and shouted a prayer to Hera, protector of cities. The omens suddenly turned favorable. The trap could spring. The signal every Spartan had been desperately waiting for finally came. Advance. What the Persians saw next broke their spirits. 10,000 Spartans didn't charge. They walked. In perfect synchronization, bronze boots stepped forward, spears leveled, shields locked. They moved not as individuals, but as a single bronze organism, inexorable as a tide. The phalanx formation at its most terrifying. Discipline turned into a killing machine. Behind the cavalry screen, Mardonius saw the Spartan advance and made his critical decision. Instead of letting horsemen continue their harassment, he ordered them aside and brought up his elite infantry. The immortals would meet the Spartans head-on. Scale armor against bronze, Persian courage against Greek discipline. This would be the collision that decided everything. The armies met with a crash that ancient writers claimed could be heard for miles. Bronze spearheads met wicker shields. Persian scimitars sparked against Greek bronze. The initial impact staggered both lines. Men in the front ranks died instantly, crushed between the pressure of their own armies. Then came the grinding melee that would define ancient warfare. The push of shields, the desperate stabbing over and under, the crushing weight of thousands of men compressed into a few hundred yards of frontage. But here's where Spartan superiority showed. Their 8-foot spears outreached Persian weapons by 2 feet. Doesn't sound like much until you're trying to kill someone who can stab you first. Their bronze armor turned Persian sword cuts. Their lifetime of training showed in economical thrusts that found every gap in Persian defense. Most crucially, their formation held. Where Persians fought as brave individuals, Spartans fought as a machine. The killing that followed shocked even the Spartans. Persian elite troops, the feared immortals who'd conquered half the world, were being systematically butchered. Their scale armor, proof against arrows, offered no protection against thrusting spears. Their shorter weapons couldn't reach past the Greek spear hedge. They died in windows, bodies piling so high that living Persians had to climb over dead comrades to reach the fight. Mardonius, watching his center crumbling, made the decision that would end an empire's dreams. Mounting his white horse, surrounded by 1,000 picked cavalry, he personally entered the battle. This was the ancient way. Leaders led from the front. His golden armor blazed in the morning sun. His presence rallied wavering Persians. For a brief moment, the battle hung in balance. But wait, the Spartans weren't alone anymore. While all Persian attention focused on the Spartan struggle, the scattered Greek contingents had reformed. The Athenians crushed the Theban traitors on the Persian left. Corinthians and others swept around the Persian right. What Mardonius thought was a broken army fleeing in darkness had been a coordinated redeployment. The retreat that looked like panic was deliberate deception. Then came the sound that froze Persian blood. The Spartan paean, their battle hymn, taken up by 80,000 Greek throats. The hunters had become the hunted. Persian confidence shattered as they realized the trap's magnitude. They weren't pursuing scattered fugitives. They were surrounded by a coordinated Greek army that had played them perfectly. In the center, the critical moment arrived. As Mardonius led another charge, trying to break the Spartan line through personal heroism, a Spartan soldier named Leonidas spotted the Persian commander. What happened next would echo across 25 centuries. Leonidas hefted a stone, not a spear, not a sword, but a simple rock, and hurled it with desperate strength. The stone struck Mardonius in the head, crushing his skull despite his golden helmet. The Persian commander toppled from his white horse, dead before he hit the ground. In that instant, Persian morale didn't just break, it disintegrated. Their commander dead, surrounded by reformed Greeks, facing the inexorable Spartan advance. The greatest army in the world became a terrified mob. But the real horror was just beginning. As Persians turned to flee, they found retreat nearly impossible. The very cavalry that had been their strength now blocked their escape. Horses and men tangled in desperate flight. Formation collapsed into every man for himself chaos. And behind them came the Greeks, not pursuing but hunting, methodical as wolves culling sheep. The next 10 minutes would become legend. Spartans didn't break formation to pursue, they advanced in their phalanx, killing everything in their path. Fleeing Persians had two choices: stand and die fighting, or run and die with spears in their backs. Most chose to run. The killing ground extended for miles as lighter Greek troops ran down fugitives. Persian corpses carpeted the earth so thickly that Greeks had to walk on bodies. Blood turned the dust to mud. The wounded were given no quarter. This wasn't war anymore, but extermination. Revenge served at industrial scale. Every dead Spartan at Thermopylae was being paid for in Persian blood, with crushing interest. Some Persians tried to make a stand at their fortified camp, hastily throwing up defenses. It only delayed the inevitable. Greeks surrounded the camp, scaled its walls, broke its gates. What followed inside those walls made the field battle look merciful. Trapped Persians were slaughtered like cattle in a pen. No surrender was offered or accepted. The camp became a charnel house that reeked of death for months afterward. Suddenly, the hunters became the hunted everywhere. Greek cavalry, inferior to Persian in open warfare, excelled at running down scattered infantry. Local Greeks who'd hidden during Persian occupation emerged to kill stragglers. Boys with farming tools attacked exhausted soldiers. The roads north became corridors of death, stretching for miles. But Pausanias had saved his deadliest move for last. He'd positioned Greek reserves not to support the battle but to block escape routes. Fleeing Persians found their retreat paths sealed by fresh Greek troops. The careful positioning during the chaotic retreat now revealed its purpose, creating a killing box from which escape was nearly impossible. Only one Persian commander kept his head. Artabazus, commanding 40,000 troops on the Persian left, saw Mardonius fall and immediately ordered withdrawal. Not a fighting retreat, not a last stand. He ran. While the center and right dissolved in slaughter, Artabazus force-marched his men north, abandoning equipment, wounded, everything except speed. He would reach Asia with most of his force intact, the only Persian success in a day of catastrophe. As the sun climbed toward noon, the battle was over. The killing would continue until darkness. The Persian camp's wooden palisades, offered no protection against Greek vengeance. Athenians reached it first, their rams splintering gates while defenders desperately tried to hold walls designed for temporary shelter, not siege warfare. When barriers broke, what poured through wasn't an army anymore. It was retribution incarnate. These Athenians had watched their city burn, their temples desecrated. Now came payback. Inside, 50,000 Persians packed together like fish in a net. Noble cavalry abandoned horses to fight on foot. Immortals formed desperate squares. Common soldiers pressed against walls, trampled comrades, clawed at ramparts trying to escape. Greek spears turned the crowded space into an abattoir. Men couldn't swing swords in the press. They could only die. The Spartans arrived next, marching through shattered gates in perfect formation even now. Where Athenians killed in rage, Spartans killed with mechanical efficiency. They formed lines, advanced steadily, speared everything that moved. No passion, no hurry, just workmanlike slaughter. Their bronze-faced advance pushed Persians into tighter groups where death came easier. What archaeologists found there still disturbs researchers. Mass graves containing thousands, many showing defensive wounds, hands severed trying to grab spears, skulls crushed by shield edges, bones bearing marks of systematic execution. The evidence suggests killing continued long after resistance ended. This wasn't battle, but deliberate annihilation. One Persian noble offered 300 talents of gold for his life, enough to fund a city for years. A Spartan speared him mid-offer. Treasures that could buy kingdoms lay scattered in blood and mud. Greeks had come for vengeance, not gold. Every Persian corpse was another payment for Thermopylae, another answer to Athens' ashes. By afternoon, the slaughter statistics defied belief. Persian dead covered the ground so thickly that accurate counting proved impossible. Conservative estimates placed enemy losses at 50,000 plus. The cream of Persian nobility, the core of their professional army, the sons of their greatest families, all fed Greek spears. Entire administrative structures died in those fields. Persian power in the west died with them. Greek losses? Barely 1,000 total. The Spartans lost 91 men, Athens 52, Tegea 16. The casualty ratio, 50-1, stands among the most lopsided in military history. How does an army lose 50,000 while killing only 1,000? The answer lay in the trap's perfection, the terrain's choice, and Greek discipline holding against Persian flexibility. Pausanias found Mardonius's body among the carnage. The Persian commander lay where he'd fallen, golden armor, blood-caked, skull crushed by Aemnestus's stone. Some urged Pausanias to mutilate the corpse as Persians had done to Leonidas. He refused. "We are Greeks, not barbarians. The dead have paid their price." Mardonius received proper burial, the only mercy shown that day. But this wasn't battle anymore. It was extermination. Fleeing Persians were hunted through forests, killed at river crossings, tracked to exhaustion. Local Greeks emerged from hiding to claim revenge for years of occupation. Persian stragglers faced farmers' scythes, shepherds' clubs, women's knives. The roads to Asia became killing paths marked by unburied dead. The Theban collaborators faced special fury. These Greeks who'd sided with Persia, who'd fought against their countrymen, received no mercy. Their leaders were executed publicly. Others were branded, enslaved, exiled. Thebes itself barely avoided destruction. Greek vengeance on Greeks proved almost as brutal as on Persians. As news spread, Greek cities erupted in celebration. Athens was avenged, Sparta's honor restored. The Persian threat that had loomed for a generation vanished in an afternoon. Temples filled with thanksgiving. Streets rang with victory songs. But Pausanias, surveying the carnage, perhaps understood what he'd unleashed. Greece was free. Unity was already fracturing. From Persian weapons, Greeks forged a memorial, the serpent column, 3 intertwined bronze snakes supporting a golden tripod. On it, they inscribed the names of the 31 cities that fought for freedom. It stood for centuries at Delphi, reminding Greeks of their finest hour. Today, its remains stand in Istanbul, a 2,500-year-old testimony to the price of freedom. The killing didn't stop until darkness made it impossible to distinguish friend from foe. Even then, Greeks with torches hunted survivors through the night. Dawn revealed a landscape transformed into a necropolis. Bodies stretched for miles. Scavenger birds darkened the sky. The stench would linger for months despite mass cremations. Freedom was won. Unity was lost. The external threat that had forced Greek cooperation died with Mardonius. Now Sparta and Athens, no longer united against Persia, would turn on each other. The victory at Platea didn't begin a golden age. It started a countdown to the Peloponnesian War that would destroy both powers. But on that August day, none of that mattered. Greece had answered Thermopylae. Every one of Leonidas's 300 had been paid for with interest written in Persian blood. The age of Persian expansion westward ended in 6 hours of disciplined savagery. Democracy, philosophy, Western civilization itself survived because Pausanias waited for favorable omens while his men died. Greece was free, but freedom would prove more dangerous than slavery. The Persian Empire never again threatened Greek independence. Xerxes retreated to his palaces, his dreams of Western conquest buried with 50,000 of his best soldiers. Within decades, a Macedonian named Alexander would use Greek military methods to conquer Persia itself. Platea hadn't just stopped Persian expansion, it reversed history's flow. Greek unity lasted exactly as long as the victory celebration. With external threat removed, old rivalries exploded. Sparta returned to its conservative isolation. Athens used its new prestige to build an empire. Within 50 years, these former allies would fight the devastating Peloponnesian War, bleeding each other white. Victory's price included the seeds of self-destruction. Pausanias himself embodied this tragedy. The architect of Greece's greatest victory grew corrupted by fame. He secretly negotiated with Persians, dreamed of personal power, betrayed everything he'd fought for. The Spartans eventually walled him up in a temple to starve, a hero's ignoble end. The man who saved Greece died as its traitor. Yet Platea's echo resonates across 2,500 years. When Churchill spoke of the few defeating the many, he channeled Platea. When military academies teach concentration of force, they cite Pausanias's patient trap. The principle remains eternal. Superior tactics and motivation can overcome overwhelming numbers when properly applied. Consider the lesson's modern relevance. Technology changes, but human nature doesn't. Disciplined defenders, fighting for home, understanding their terrain, can still confound larger invaders. From Napoleon in Russia to America in Vietnam, Platea's fundamental truth endures. Moral factors can outweigh material advantage. The battle saved more than Greece. Had Persia won, no Athenian democracy would have flourished. No Socrates questioning, no Plato teaching, no Aristotle thinking. Roman Republic would have faced Persian satrapies instead of Greek ideas. Christianity would have emerged into a different world. Every aspect of Western development pivoted on those 6 hours. But perhaps the deepest lesson is darker. Platea showed that civilized humans could become killing machines when pushed too far. Those disciplined Spartans, who stood under arrow storms, became merciless executioners. Those democratic Athenians became vengeful slaughterers. The thin line between soldier and butcher vanished when revenge mixed with opportunity. Modern military historian Victor Davis Hanson called Platea the most important battle you've never heard of. He's right. Thermopylae got the glory. Heroic defeat makes better stories than brutal victory. But Platea delivered results. It wasn't pretty, wasn't noble, wasn't cinematic. It was effective. 50,000 dead enemies are more persuasive than 300 martyrs. 10,000 Spartans had indeed avenged their 300 brothers, extracting a blood price that still shocks. Every Thermopylae defender was paid for 166 times over. In pure mathematical terms, this might be history's most complete military revenge. Leonidas was avenged so thoroughly that Persia never forgot the lesson. Standing on Platea's fields today, you see only farmland. No monuments mark where empires collided, but the ground remembers. Every harvest brings up arrowheads, spear points, bones. The earth itself testifies to the price of freedom, paid in full one August day when patience became slaughter, when defense became offense, when 10,000 bronze-clad warriors reminded the world why Spartans were feared above all others. The 300 died as heroes, the 10,000 killed as professionals. Both were necessary, both extracted their price. History remembers the martyrs, but was shaped by the victors. At Platea, Western civilization was saved by men willing to become monsters for one afternoon. That's the uncomfortable truth beneath freedom's foundation. Sometimes survival requires savagery. The Spartans understood. Do we?